So the next topic is populations. Population can be defined as a group of individuals of the same species that live in a given geographical area which share or compete for the same resources and have the potential to reproduce. With respect to population, population can be defined as a group of individuals of the same species. Here, the species are all the same. It is living in that particular geographical area, and these species, they are competing or they are sharing the same resources. Resources can be the food resource or the shelter, and they have a potential to interbreed among themselves. The example of it is bacteria in a culture plate and the lotus plant in a pond. Population ecology is an important area of ecology as it links the ecology to the population, genetics and evolution. So, population ecology, it explains the ecology. Along with that, it also explains the population, the characteristic features of the population, the genetics of the population, and also the evolution of the particular population. The next one is the population attributes. Population attributes means attributes refers to the characteristic features. So the characteristic features of a population are, the first one is birth rate. Birth rate is defined as per capita birth. Per capita means per person or each person. Let us consider an example. In a pond, there are 20 lotus plants in the last year, and through the reproduction, 8 new plants were added. So, the current population is 28. And now, how do you calculate the birth rate? Birth rate can be calculated by 8 divided by 20, that is 0.4 offspring per lotus per year. The second attribute of the population is death rate. Death rate can be referred as per capita death. Let us consider an example. Consider the 4 individuals in a laboratory population of 40 fruit flies died during a week. So, 40 Drosophila melanogaster was cultured in the lab, out of which the 4 individuals died in a week. So, you are calculating the death rate as 4 divided by 40 is equal to 0.1 individuals per fruit fly per week. The third attribute of the population is the sex ratio. Every population has a sex ratio. For example, 60% of the population is a female and 40% is male. Next, the fourth attribute of the population is age pyramid. Age pyramid can be defined as if the age distribution is plotted for a population, the resulting structure is called as an age pyramid. For human population, the age pyramid generally shows age distribution of male and the female in a combined diagram. Let us understand this with the help of the diagram. A population has 3 ecological age groups. The first one is the pre-reproductive, the second one is the reproductive, and the third one is post-reproductive. Pre-reproductive individuals are those which have still not attained their puberty, whereas reproductive individuals are those which are fertile in nature. Post-reproductive individuals are the one which have attained the menopause stage. The shape of a pyramid reflects the growth status of the population, whether it is growing, stable or declining. Now these are the 3 different age pyramids. Now let us discuss one by one. The first one is an expanding age pyramid, or is also known as growing age pyramid, and the shape of this is triangular in nature. Therefore we are calling it as triangular age pyramid. Here the pre-reproductive individuals are large. The number of reproductive individuals are moderate, while the post-reproductive individuals are less in number. Next one is the stable age population. So with respect to this stable human population, the shape is bell-shaped. Here the number of pre-reproductive and the reproductive individuals is almost equal. Post-reproductive individuals are comparatively less in number. Here the population size remains stable. It is neither growing or it is diminishing. The third one is the declining. The declining population is also called as urn-shaped age pyramid. Urn is also called as vase-shaped age pyramid. Here the reproductive age group is higher when compared to the pre-reproductive age group. And the number of post-reproductive individuals is less in number. So it is declining or a diminishing population with a negative growth. Population size, otherwise also known as population density, which is represented by capital N, can be defined as number of individuals of a species present per unit area or volume. Let us consider an example of a Siberian crane at Bharatpur wetlands. It can be as low as 10 in number, or it can be up to millions like Chlamydomonas in a pond. But in certain cases, population size is measured in terms of percent cover or biomass. Let us consider again an example. There are 200 Parthenium plants and a single huge banyan tree. In such cases, the percentage cover or a biomass is more meaningful to measure the population size to show how important the banyan tree is. There are many other ways of estimating the population size. With respect to the total number, it is difficult to measure a huge population. In such cases, the relative population density is used. For example, the number of fishes which are caught per trap, it indicates the total population density in a lake. In some other cases, the indirect estimation of a population sizes is performed. For example, the tiger census in National Park and Tiger Reserve is based on the pug mark and fecal pellets. The next one is the population growth. The population size, it changes with time depending on the various factors like food availability, the predation pressure and weather. The changes in the population density, it gives us the idea whether the population is expanding or declining. There are four basic processes that fluctuate or it deviates the population density. The first one is the natality, second one is the mortality, third is the immigration, and the fourth one is emigration. So now let us discuss one by one. The first one is the natality. Natality is represented by capital B. It is a number of birth in a population during a given period of time. Whereas mortality, which is represented by capital D, is a number of death in a population during a given period. Immigration, which is represented by capital I, it is a number of individuals of a same species that have come into a habitat from elsewhere during a given time period. Let us consider this is a particular habitat of one certain species living over here, and from elsewhere, from outside, the same species from outside comes and joins this habitat. This is called as immigration. So the definition states it is a number of individuals of a same species that have come into this habitat from elsewhere. From outside, the same species of populations entered into a certain habitat. And the fourth one is emigration. Emigration is represented by E. It means it is the number of individuals of a population who left the habitat and gone elsewhere during a given time period. So this is a particular habitat, and the certain individual from this habitat has left this habitat and it has gone somewhere else. Natality and immigration increases the population density. That is, the number of birth and the immigration both has increased the population density, whereas the mortality, that is the number of death, and the immigration, it decreases the population density. If n is the population density at a time t, then its density at a time t plus 1 is n t plus 1 is equal to nt plus b plus I minus d plus e. What does this equation indicate? This equation indicates that the population density will increase if birth and emigration is more than the death and emigration. If death and emigration is more, then the population density will decrease. So, under normal condition, birth and death are two important factors which influences the population density. But there are two other factors which are under special conditions which influence the population density. The first one is if a new habitat is just been colonized. Then the second factor is if the emigration is more than the birth rate. Then with these two factors, the population density gets affected. Population growth models. There are two types of population growth models. The first one is an exponential growth and the second one is the logistic growth. Let's first discuss about the exponential growth model. The resource availability, such as the food and the space, is essential for the unimpeded population growth. If resources are unlimited, then each species shows its full innate potential to grow in number. Then the population grows in an exponential or geometric fashion. Let us consider this graph. The y-axis represents the population size and an x-axis represents the time. Because of the unlimited supply of the food and the space, the population increases. And the population increases exponentially, resulting in a J-shaped curve. Therefore, this exponential growth is also called as J-shaped growth. The size of the population is n and the birth rate are represented by b and the death rate is represented as d. Then any increase or the decrease in the size of the population during a unit time t will be represented by dn by dt. So dn by dt is equal to b minus d into n. So dn represents the increase or decrease in the population size, dt represents the unit time period, b represents the birth rate, d represents the death rate, and n represents the population size. So let's assume that b minus d is equal to r. Then dn by dt is equal to rn. What does the r represent? The r represents the intrinsic rate of natural increase, which is a very important parameter for assessing the impact of any biotic or abiotic factor on the population growth. In other words, r represents the maximum capacity to reproduce. The r value of a Norway rat is 0.015. The r value for a floor beetle is 0.12. The r value for the human population in India in the year 1981 was 0.0205. So what does this indicate? This indicates that higher the value of r, the faster the intrinsic growth rate of population. That means higher the value of r, the organism have a maximum capacity to reproduce. So with respect to this, the r value of the floor beetle is higher. So the intrinsic value of natural increase of this R value is higher. It indicates that this floor beetle has the maximum capacity to reproduce when compared to the Norway rat and the human population. So after integration and differentiation, the exponential growth equation is NT is equal to N naught ERT, where NT represents the population density after the time T. N naught represents the population density at an initial time 0. R represents the intrinsic rate of natural increase and E represents the base of natural logarithms. And the next population growth model what we are going to study is the logistic growth model. Ideally, there is no population in the nature which is having an unlimited resources for the exponential growth, which leads to the competition between the individuals for the limited resources. So finally, the fittest individuals will survive and it will reproduce. In nature, the given habitat has enough resources to support the maximum possible number, after which the nature do not have the capacity to support them. This is called as carrying capacity, and the carrying capacity is represented by the capital K.